Hey guys, so in today's video, I want to kind of read this post that was in one of the medical assistant groups that I am a member of. And I want to give my thoughts on it because as soon as I read this post, it really made me start thinking about some things. So I want to read this post. It says, "How do you handle providers who don't want you rooming their patients?" But I don't want to really address that in this video. Because I don't think that any provider should be, if you work with a provider or in a office where a provider works, um, if there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be rooming their patients, then they should be thankful that they have medical assistants working for them or with them to help them out because there is a shortage where I live of medical assistants who are willing to work. And so, like the hospital where I live is always hiring medical assistants, always in a bunch of different um, clinics, different specialties, and they're hiring travel medical assistants as well. And so I just can't imagine a provider being the way that this person says they are. So this person says, "I'm a new MA. I've been on my first and current MA job for 6 months. I work in primary care. My coworkers resent me and have damaged my stethoscope and jacket. They removed the earpiece from my stethoscope. They have slashed a cut in my coat. One yelled it's either me or her, and one of the providers, an older white male, slams doors. Yet this same provider a month ago said he appreciates my work. Initially, I didn't try to room his patients because I've dealt with racist white male providers before at my previous job as a receptionist. Will I ever be accepted on a job? Will I have to quit healthcare entirely? It seems my female coworkers enjoy turning providers against me." So that is the part of this post that I actually want to address. If there is nothing else that is part of this story, if you ever are going through something like this, for one, why would you continue to work in a situation that people are treating you that way? If you have not gone to your HR or your supervisor to report that this is happening, please do, because that is abuse. That is abusive behavior. And for one, why would they be slashing your coat? Why would they be touching your stethoscope? Like that is destruction of property. And I have had, abuse when I was working as a CNA, but nothing to that level. It was more verbal abuse, and people would make up lies about my work and things like that. So I don't know if that's what's happening in this situation, but I would not stay working in a situation like that. Um, I would be the first one to quit that job, especially if I had reported this type of behavior and treatment to a supervisor or to HR and nothing was done about it, or they said, "Oh, well, we need history of this happening." Like, if someone is destroying your property when you're coming into work and you're doing your job, unless you were not doing your job the way that you were supposed to, there's absolutely no excuse for the provider to say that you shouldn't be rooming their patients unless you are doing something that harms the patients, or, like I said, you're not doing your job to the full responsibilities that you have. There's absolutely no excuse for a provider to be telling you that. Um, like I said, I couldn't imagine um, having to deal with this every day on a job. There are so many CNA jobs and CNA videos that I have made, um, but CNA jobs that I worked at where people would make up lies just because they didn't like me. And I was so quick to leave those jobs because, even though I loved interacting with the residents and I loved caring for residents and caring for people in general, I would leave those jobs because I see that I'm not going to continue to put myself in a situation where I'm going to walk into a place that I absolutely hate being, where I'm worrying about, whether or not I'm going to be safe. Because if they will destroy your property, how safe are you as a person? How safe are you, physically? Are they going to harm you next? Is where I would go with that. I wouldn't even worry about being accepted on the job, because if people are going to act like that, that is very unprofessional behavior. And, like I said, it is destruction of property. And what's next? Like if you let them get away with mistreating you, first of all, I would not even be worried about whether they're racist or not. Um, I mean, yes, it is a factor, and it's something that is very detrimental, but I would worry first about the destruction of property and the fact that they aren't even willing to, you know, if you're not doing something correctly because you're new and you maybe overlooked or didn't realize that you weren't doing something correctly, and they're not willing to say, hey, I noticed that you're doing something this way, but this is how it should really be done, or having education provided or training provided so that you are doing it correctly, or following the policies and things like that. That is what should be done. If you're not doing something correctly, or you're doing something, that you shouldn't be doing, and they notice it, you're a new MA. There needs to be some sort of accountability, but I don't know. This makes me very, very, very sad, because when you see people who are willing to work in healthcare and who want to do good, and they're being treated like this, and you wonder why people don't want to work in healthcare, this is one of the one of the main reasons why people leave healthcare, is because of the mistreatment and because of the way that they're, looked at as less than. And I just feel so sad for this person. And like they said, they are a new medical assistant and they've been on their job for 6 months. It's just sad that in that 6 months, they've had clothing destroyed, they've had stethoscopes destroyed. Stethoscopes are not cheap. Even if you get a cheap stethoscope, ones that work well, I have a Littmann stethoscope, and I also have another stethoscope. Sorry, I'm having trouble talking today. Um, you know, those are not cheap. Getting the higher quality ones, I mean, you don't necessarily need that as a medical assistant, but I choose to use it because I do have some hearing issues. Um, I use higher quality ones because I can hear better. Um, but I don't know. Uh, Posts like this make me really sad to be in healthcare working with people who are like this. And, it just makes me wonder what they said to this provider about you, or about this person who made this post. So yeah, if you are a medical assistant or you work in healthcare in a different aspect, let me know if you've had to deal with things like this before. I'm curious to see what other people's experience is, and I'm sorry if you hear the furnace, it did just kick on. Um, I hope this person doesn't quit healthcare entirely, because we need people badly. We need people who care and who are willing to work. So, yeah, it's just really sad. If you have any topics or any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below, and I will talk to you guys in tomorrow's video.